Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Yevamot daf Nun Gimel. We are going to begin on Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. So we were learning when it comes to an individual that does chalitza, and then afterwards does mimer. The question is, does that mimer mean anything? So according to the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, as we saw in yesterday's daf, who holds kedusha is not tais b'chavi lavin, that once you do chalitza, you now fall in the category of yivna, and therefore in that situation, mimer doesn't mean anything, and therefore you don't have to do anything because the mimer is not shaykh, because the kedusha is not typhus. According to the Chachamim, on the other hand, is in all situations, because kedusha is typhus b'chavi lavin, so you do need to give a get. Then we discovered this in-between sheet of Rabbi. Rabbi says it's all totally, it depends. If you did the mimer l'shem ishus, then you do need to get. If it was done l'shem it was a shame Yavmos because of a Yevamot, then in that situation you don't need to give a get. So we saw a couple of answers. The last one we saw was where he said hiskachili bezikas Yevamot, that even though you did mimer, but you said it the language of bezikas Yavmot, and then we said it's all totally whether you hold yesh zik or ein zik. Okay, so now we continue to discuss this machlokas further. We're talking about if it was a chalitza kashera, namely, what is a chalitza kashera? When you do the chalitza, you could have done yibum. So, if you would have made that declaration, at that situation, no longer will the mimer work, because since the chalitza was a chalitza kshera, that was such a powerful chalitza that certainly she was completely removed. The mimer afterwards means nothing. So what is the machlokas? V'hacha b'chalitza psula k'meflagi. So what does that mean? How is it a chalitza psula? It's a case where he first gave her a get, and then he did the chalitza. So since you already did chalitza, you gave the get first, so therefore you already fall in the category of yivna. It's not shaykh for you to do yibum anymore. So even though you have to do chalitza, it's considered to be a weak chalitza, because that chalitza is not in lieu of doing yibum, because you couldn't do yibum. So this case where it's a chalitza psula, since it's not such a strong chalitza, maybe mimer afterwards actually will do something enough that you actually would have to give a get afterwards. So mar savar chalitza psula poteres. Mar savar chalitza psula ain't poteres. So that's the machlokas. Since you gave a get first, this makes it a chalitza psula, since you can no longer do yibum. So if you did mimer afterwards, whether or not a get needs to be given. So Rav Ashi Amar the kuliyam chalitza psula ain't poteres. In that situation, if you gave a chalitza psula because it's a weak chalitza, the mimer afterwards, you will have to give a get. V'hacha b'yesh tenai b'chalitza k'mefagi. The machlokas is if you made a condition. What does that mean? So you made a condition. You said the chalitza will be valid only after I'm paid a certain sum of money. So the question is, again, that in certain ways weakens the chalitza. In other words, there is such an element of a tanai. And therefore, as long as that tanai was not finished, so now that mimer was done afterwards, so therefore you would have to give a get. And therefore it's a chalitza anyway, and therefore you don't do mimer afterwards. Actually, you could make this stipulation. The question is, do you have to do a tanai kofel, as Rashi reminds us, based on the Gemara in Kedushin, it has to be like the tanai of Bnei Gad of Bnei Ruvain, a positive, and then it has to be explained doubled on the negative side. As Rashi says, "V'im lo titnu lo tehe chalitza." If you don't give me the money, then it won't be a chalitza. You have to say, if you give it to me, it'll be a chalitza. If it's not, then it's not. So Mar Savar be'inan tanai kafel, Mar Savar lo be'inan tanai kafel. Okay. Then the Gemara continues. Cholatz v'yasa mimer. So as long as you did the chalitza first, even though you did mimer and then a get, uvoil, etc. So since chalitza was done, so the Mishnah says you don't have to do anything else. So we said that Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva, because its kedushin is not typhus b'chavi lavin. So once you do the chalitza, that's it. However, when it comes to bia, it's questionable if it's the first, second, or third, or dafka at the first action. So why doesn't it say it this language? Why don't we say the same thing? So Abaya v'Rav and Yomer Tavayu Tini inach Rabbi. Right, that's what it should say. But Tani Didan, our Tana Hataras Yevamot Shoka Difale. The notion that we're mattering this Yevamot to literally go into the shuk is even a bigger chiddush. So the fact is, he wants to mention, not even though it's true, once you do bia, that's it. But once you do bia, it means she's your wife. So that's not as much of a chiddush as you're completely free her once chalitza is done, and therefore that's the one that's mentioned. Fine. So as you said, it doesn't matter if it's one Yevama or two Yevamos. It doesn't matter if it's Rachel and Leah or just Rachel. So Masnisa look Ben Azai. So our Mishnah is not like the Shita of Ben Azai. As we're going to see, as Rashi says down here, what does Ben Azai say? The Oimer ein Maimer acher Maimer b'shtei Yevamos v'Yavam echad. He actually holds if you have one Yavam and he does Maimer to Rachel and then he does Maimer to Leah, he holds ein Maimer acher Maimer. That it doesn't work. The second Maimer means nothing. Says Rashi, Masnisin b'shtei Yevamos, because our Mishnah is talking about where there's two Yevamos v'Yavam echad, Kamairi. So therefore, it must be, it's not like him. Our Mishnah is saying that there is this concept of mimer after mimer. But according to Ben Azai, he says, ein mimer acher mimer. That once you gave mimer to one, the second mimer means nothing. Okay, so back in the Gemara, so Masis no Ben Azai, the Sanya. Ben Azai yomer, yesh mimer acher mimer b'shtei Yevamin v'Yavam achas. Ve'ein mimer acher mimer b'shtei Yevamos v'Yavam echad. So he says there is no Maimer acher Maimer if there's two Yevamos and one Yavam. So again, in the case we say there is Maimer acher Maimer if there's two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. So Reuven did Maimer and then Shimon did Maimer to the same woman. So that second brother, there is an element of something, and therefore he's usher to her kroivim. However, if it's just one brother that does mimer to Rachel, then does mimer to Leah, so in that situation, he says, no, that second mimer doesn't mean anything. So, and since this one Yavam already did mimer to Rachel, so he kind of like used up his power, and the next mimer, therefore, is nothing. That's according to the Shita Ben Azai. Ketzad mimer zu. So he explains, he did mimer to this one, mimer to this one. So le'masayli l'shmuel. So let's say our Mishnah is in support to Shmuel. Yomer Shmuel, chalatz l'balas mimer. If let's say you did chalitza to the balas mimer, to the one that you did mimer with, l'nifter tzarasa. It's not going to pater the co-wife, since he still needs to give a get to remove the mimer. So even though he was chalatz l'balas mimer, he did chalitza, so you would think that means the other woman should be free. No, because since this original woman is not completely free, because since he did mimer, he still needs to get. So therefore, she's not free until it gets given. So tiyota de Rav Yosef. That's going to be a tiyota on Rav Yosef, says Rashi. He says b'chaylitz, which we saw in Mem Daled, v'yishmach adam meiboiroi v'achem srichen lahen. He said that you're not supposed to, figuratively, pour like dirty water or mess up someone's clean water. Even though you're not going to want the water anyway, nonetheless, you're not supposed to cause other people problems. You should think about her. If you did chalitza to one of them, v'kamaisa boy get, and the first one needs a get, v'nimsa paisa shtehen min kahuna. Learn lichleitz l'kamaisa the hechaverta kshera. So we're talking about a case where you have two women and one was already puzzled to kahuna anyway. So you said, oh, she's do chalitza with the first one, and therefore the other woman will be kosher. But according to this shita, he says that you need to give a get anyway, and therefore you're going to puzzle both of them anyway from kahuna. So the Gemara says as follows. So that's a tiyuf from Rav Yosef. So mikatani chayletz cholatz katani diavad. It doesn't mean that you should do it. L'chatchila, it means it's b'diavad. What does that mean? It's fine. B'diavad. Okay, weiter. Weiter. Get lazu v'get lazu. So lema Messiah Rabba Rav Huna, Diamar Rabba Rav Huna, Chalitza Psula Sricha Laxra Kol Achen. So he said, since you gave a get before, so now it's a Chalitza Psula. Again, because that Chalitza is weak, because you can't do Yibum. Since once you give a get, you no longer can do Yibum. So therefore, that's why it says get Lazu, get Lazu. You have to give a get to each of them. Must be because it's a chalitza psul, and that's why you have to give a get to everyone. No, my tzrichos to alma. It's just talking about in general. It's not necessarily a raya. It just means that you have to give gittin, but it doesn't mean necessarily you have to give a get to everyone. Get lazu v'cholotz lazu. Let's say you gave one a get and you did chalitza to the other one. So leim masai l'shmul to have Rabbi Yosef. Again, let it be a tiyufta on the shita of Rabbi Yosef. So he said. Mikatani choletz, choletz katani diavad. Same answer, b'diavad. Choletz v'cholatz, or cholatz. V'lisni nami ein acher biyakum. So by Rabbi Nimar Tavayu Tani ein acher biyakum. You're right. V'tani didan the tarsi avamul shuka difale. Again, he wants to mention the heter of her going completely free. Ben yavam echad b'lishnei avamois. Even if you have one, doesn't matter if it's one Yavam, Reuven, to two women, or the other way around. The Bishlam, Rabbi Yochanan, Nemer Kol Besa, Dolav Koi. According to Rabbi Yochanan, he says the entire house is under a lav, says Rashi, Kol Achin al HaChalitza. All the brothers regarding Chalitza, V'al Tzarasa, and the co-wives are Bala Ba'alma. Kechalitz Atzmai, Deshlichas Didhu Avad. So there is considered to be a lav to marry any of those women at that point. Once you do chalitza to one, so that's it. You're aser to her. So I can understand, according to him, he says kula beisa balav koi. Itzro chashminan the inkdushin toisim b'chavi lavin. That's come to tell you this chiddush that once you did chalitza, that's it. You cannot marry her. If you want to tell me that everyone is actually chayiv kares, it's rochash me'ina the incondition test chayiv krisos. Of course not. So it says boil. If the first man had bia, biasa mimer, and then the second guy did mimer with her, it's rochash me'ina the incondition test ish. Of course not. If the first man already had bia with her, now she's his wife. Now the second guy did mimer. There's no chiddush in that either. El added the tanya taras yavam echad v'yavam achas. Tananami shnei yavamos v'yavam echad. Ve'added the tanya shnei yavamos v'yavam echad. Tananami shnei yavamin v'yavam achas. Okay. TA 6. My time of the Tanakama Shabia Achar Haget. He didn't do this yet. Weiter. Okay, let's continue the next. Omud Nun Gimel Omud Beis. Cholotz v'asa maimer. So as we said, v'nasan, says Rashi, a yavam echad v'yavam achas koi. We're talking about you have one yavam who ended up doing all this to one yavama. He did chalitza and then he did maimer. Fine. So bishul cholotz v'asa maimer. I can understand the case where chalitza was done then maimer. It's nigzar maimer de basa chalitza atu maimer de kamei chalitza. We want to be a geyser mimer that took place after chalitza, that we say that is nothing because you already did chalitza. Atu mimer the kamei chalitza. You would think maybe also the same thing you should if mimer was done before chalitza, right? Says Rashi, ligzer mimer de basar chalitza, that the mimer was after chalitza. Liboy get atu mimer the kamei chalitza. Kamashmul no gazrinam. So again, so you would think when it comes, if you did first mimer, then you did chalitza, so you have to give a get for the first mimer. But you would maybe think, well, in that case, it's a little confusing. What if you first did chalitza, then mimer, so you still don't have to do anything? But maybe you should require a get, because if you don't require a get there, the person's going to make a mistake and you did mimer before chalitza, you would end up thinking that you don't have to give a get for the mimer then either, and that wouldn't be the case. So it's true, but we're not geyser in the situation of chalitza then mimer. Everyone should know this. Why, in the case, again, you have one yavam who gave to one woman, did chalitza, and then he further distanced him from her by doing chalitza. So why do you need that? Says Rashi, Lamai lahani hai get ila meisra ha itzru leila kroivasako olav. He's already, once he did chalitza, he's already ushered her anyway. So what is this whole notion over here? Well, taimei chemaseifa bal biyasa maimer. Let's say he did bia and then he did mimer, which seemingly doesn't accomplish anything. It was already his wife. Bal b'nasin get. He was boiling to give her get. Now bishul bal b'nasin get israch. That I can understand why it's mentioned. So that I mean the nigzer get the basar bi'ila. You maybe make geyser giving get after the bia. Ought to get the kamei bi'ila. Ought to the get that was done given before. Kamashmo the gazrina, says Rashi. So that I mean the nigzer get the basar bia. Get that was done after bia. The loy tiski le beget. Do below chalitza. The fact is, a get is not enough. You also need chalitza, because you married her through bia. So ought to get the mekmei bia, the lo lemru get sagi biavama b'makam chalitza. The person would maybe think, oh yeah, all you need to do is give a get and that's enough. So a person could make that mistake and think that all you need to do is a get and that would be sufficient. You wouldn't need to do chalitza. El boy what's the problem? It's his wife. I did the Tanachot V'Asa Maimer, Tananami Bol V'Asa Maimer. I did the boil, Mistim Bol V'Nasan Get, Tananami Chot V'Nasan Get. Okay. Bizman Shehi, so Masnisa Doloki Haitanda, the Sanya Alba Yoisi Ben Yochanan, Isha Shalaima, Imir Mishim Rameir, Achas B'Ila, V'Achas Chalitza. When it comes to if Bia was first, or Chalitza, but Chila, if that was the first thing done, in Acharei Klum, then there's nothing afterwards. It doesn't matter what was done afterwards. You don't have to rectify it. Therefore, if you did chalitza, it doesn't matter what was done afterwards, mimer or get. You don't have to do anything. She's released because chalitza was first. It was a strong chalitza. So too, if you did bia, she's your wife. If you did anything else afterwards, that doesn't mean anything. If let's say you did mimer, for example. However, when it comes to if you did the bia or the chalitza as the second action, not the first, or let's say a third, then yesh acharei klum. At that point, you do have to do something else. So again, let's say for example, we did mimer then chalitza. So we know that even though you did chalitza, but since you did mimer first, you have to do something afterwards. When it comes to bia, they're geyser. So therefore, there's a distinction between it being the first action and the middle action. Chalitza, the leikal migzar, ula gazrina. When it comes to chalitza, there's no reason to be geyser. Nothing to be concerned of. Because once you do chalitza, that's it. The truth is, there's nothing to be geyser if you did bia as well. Ligzer bia achar get mishum bia achar chalitza. Then maybe it should be geyser bia after a get because of bia after chalitza. Kivan de chalitza deraisa. Since chalitza, we know it's the deraisa made the yade. Everyone knows that once chalitza is done, the bia that took place afterwards is nothing. Udika'amrid ligzer bia achar maimer. Mishum bia achar bia. Kivan de bia deraisa ha made the yadia. Again, since everyone knows the din of bia is deraisa, they're going to know that she was married to him. Rabbi Yosef ben Chanan savar lo karabana the gazi bebia begaz b'chalitza mishum bia. Okay, now let's see a couple questions. TA 6. My Tana the Tanakama. What's the reason of the Tanakama shabiachar haget yesha acharei klum? How come if you did bia after the get, why do they say yesh acharei haklum, that you still have to do something else? And he says because your guys mishum bia achar chalitza. If you do bia after chalitza, the asala miboil achar chalitza, because you may end up doing bia after chalitza, and because of that concern, so therefore that's the reason why Also, when it comes to bia after get, we do the same thing. So since we're concerned with bia after chalitza, which again a person is definitely not allowed to do, so because of that, we say you have to do something as well when it comes to bia achar haget. So Gemara says here, it says bal b'nasan get bishlam bal b'nasan get itzrach sakna b'negzer get the basa be'ilah atu get the kamei be'ilah kamashal the gazrina. Okay, and then he asks the question: my time with them the chemi adoli gazrina, my time with Rabbi Yosi mishum rameir the gam achar chalitza psul yesh achar kolom. So he says, how come? According to the third sheet, the Rabbi Yosi, he says that even after chalitza, a chalitza psula, you have to do something afterwards. So he says like this: Rav Nachman kivan de chalitza deraisa midiyadei. Everyone knows, so therefore there's no reason to be geyser that a person's going to think that they can do B and it's going to have any validity. Well, Rabbi Yosi gezer chalitza atubia, and according to him, he makes a gezer chalitza atubia, which is the reason why he says also after chalitza psula that you have to do something because of his geyser. Okay, so this was all TA hard question, and apparently I got it half right, which makes sense. It's a hard question. TA 7, so it has different pieces to this. Whether a geyser chalitza mishum bia, or to say that by chalitza kivan chalitza deraisa mediyade, so a person's not going to make a mistake about bia after chalitza. Okay, that was TA 7. Question 7. I'm reading the Gemara. The hani tarti cholitz v'nasan get. If you have, there's two cases. You did chalitza, and then you gave a get. So he said, really, we want you to do chalitza, that's it, according to our Mishnah. Boil, if you had bia first, v'nasan get. Ditnan mastis and neinach rein klum. By both of them, that's it. Once you did chalitza first, or you did bia first, neinach rein klum. So ech mehem israch, ve'ech mehem agav misti. One of them is a chiddush, and one of them is not. So which one is a chiddush, and what is the chiddush? So we say, boil b'nasan get. The chiddush is that even if you were first boiled, then you gave a get, you would maybe think that you would have to do something. Sakdalim nigzer get the basar be'ilah, or to get the kamei be'ilah. Because we would maybe make this connection and say, well, we know that if you first did bia, then you gave a get, so it's nothing. But maybe what happens if the other way around? What happened if he gave a get before the bia? In that situation, as Rashi says, ligzor get the basar bia the loy tiskile get below chalitza. So in that situation, you would it's not enough without a get. To get the mekmebia, the low lamer get sagi Yevamot bimkoim chalitza. You would maybe think you only have to do this, and you would not end up having to do chalitza. Now let's continue the next parak, 6th parak. Habal yevimtoi. Person has relations with his Yevamot. Bein b'shaygig, bein b'mezid, bein b'oinis, bein b'ratzayin. It's considered to be good. Doesn't matter if it was done on purpose, by accident, by mistake. It says Rashi b'shaygig kasaver shehi ishto. You thought this was your wife. It turns out she was someone else. Efilu shaygig v'hi mezida, hu mezid v'hi shogegas. It doesn't matter if, let's say, one was shogeg, one was mezid, it still works. Hu onais v'hi lo anusa. So again, they have totally different kavanas. He anusa v'hu lo anus. Echad hamar v'echad hagaymer. Kana, if he only he was ma'ara, says Rashi, shlo gomer biyasai. He didn't complete the having bia, or if he did, kana, it's still a kinyan. And because that, Rashi says, what does that mean? So now you take over your brother's inheritance. Yotzia beget. If you want to get rid of her at this point, you need to give her a get, because she's like your wife, a whole davar. We don't make a distinction bin bia labia between one bia and the next. Says Rashi, bin bia kadarka l'shlo kadarka. It doesn't matter if it's bia kadarka or if it's shlo kadarka. V'chein habal achas michalor harayis shibatayra. A person who has bia with any of their rayas or psulois, keep going almano kohen gadol grusha chutz kohen hedjed mamzers on the sin Yisrael bas shalom mamzul the sin pasla v'chiluk bin bia labia. When it comes to all these different arayos and prohibitions, there's no difference if it's bia kadarka, bia shalo kadarka. In all situations, whether you had only moira or you actually had gemar bia, the din is that you are going to be chayiv in all those situations. Now let's see the Gemara. Maya filu. It says it's a kinyan. Even if he's a shogeg, she's a mazid. Loma boy comer. Loma boy who shogeg v'hi kimechav no la mitzvah. It doesn't matter if he was the one who was an accident. He wasn't. It was not deliberate, but she had kavana for the mitzvah. Inami who mazid v'hi kimechav no la mitzvah. Or the other way around, he was b'mezid, let's say, and she was mechavin for the mitzvah. Again, mezid, Rashi says, is l'shem znus, l'shem mitzvah. So he mamish had no interest in doing the mitzvah. Afilu hu shaygig v'himazida. Even if, let's say, he was b'shaygig and she was b'mezid, the tirvayi lo k'mechavni l'shem mitzvah. And let's say neither of them had any kavanas, I feel hachi kana. It's still a kinyan. Tanu Rav Chia, I feel shneim shaygigin, shneim mazidin, shneim manusin. It doesn't make any difference. Even if, again, they were shaygig, they were both b'mezid, both ba'oinis. In that situation, it's still a kinyan. On this, the masnis and hechidami. What exactly is this like mistake of sorts? Onus, a woman's ma'anis usually is raped. What does it mean that's onus? So, does it mean that, let's say you have these avchachavim that force her and have bia with her? If you're going to tell me this, but when it comes to tashmish, there's no such thing as an oinus, because the only way that a man is able to actually have tashmish is only if his aver is kishui, and that has to be ladas. Ella biyashin. It's talking about where the yavam was sleeping. It says Rashi shnis kasha kishu yashin, that he happened to been kasha, but his aver was kasha, but he was sleeping, and in that situation, the Rabbi Yehuda, as we continue to down above, yashin loy kana be yavimtai. What do you mean? It's not a kinyan. You're not kinda your yavama if you're sleeping. It says Rashi, the yashin la bardas v'lo yahavi kinyan o kinyan. In order to do a kinyan, you have to be awake. Ela beniska. Maybe we're talking about a case beniska that it was inserted. Says Rashi, shnis kasha leishto. His kavana was to have tashmish with his wife, but nafal min hagag v'niska b'yavimtai, and he fell off a roof, and instead he ended up having tashmish with the yavama. So in that case also, Amarabba nafal min hagag v'niska chay ba'arba devarim. So you're going to be chay for 4 things for causing her damages: nezik sar shipo and repo and sheves. Will be a vimto lekana. Again, you're not kind in that situation either. El kagain shnischaven leishtai. Again, you had kavana to have tashmish with your wife. Instead, the tukvaso yevimtai. The yavama grabbed him, uval, and had tashmish with him. So that case, it's considered to still be a kinyan. That's considered to be an oinus. But nonetheless, that's considered to be a kinyan. Says, stop there. TA 7. Habal yevimto ben be'oinus kana be'elu be'zofanim loy kana. Which times are you not kaina? So as we said, if Yashin, if the Yavam is sleeping, or Nafal Minagag Veniske, that if he encountered her while he fell from a roof. Ad Kan.